In the next few minutes, we're going to discover how easy it is to change the attributes of a shape using the preset panels, as well as combine multiple shapes on a single layer so that the shapes can interact with one another. First, I'll create a new document, and I'll just choose the default Photoshop size, double-clicking in order to open it, and using Command 0 in order to zoom in. In order to add a heart shape from the Shapes panel, I used the flyout menu and loaded the Legacy Shapes and More. Then in that folder, I'm going to use the All Legacy Default Shapes, use the disclosure triangle in order to look at the default shapes and just drag and drop the heart from the Shapes preset panel into the image area. I'll tap Return or Enter in order to apply the information. Then I can change the color of the shape or add a gradient or a pattern by using the different preset panels. If I click on a color in the Swatches panel, it changes the fill of the shape. If I move to the Gradients panel and click on a gradient, it'll add a gradient to the shape. And if I move to Patterns, I can click to fill the shape with a pattern. I'll return to the Shape preset picker and drag out a second heart, again tapping the Enter or the Return key in order to apply the transformation. Of course, if I did want to make this larger or smaller, I could just use the transformation handles in order to scale the vector graphic. All right, I'll just tap Enter. It's fine if that one's a little bit larger. Not only can I click on a swatch or a gradient or a pattern in order to change the fill, I can also drag and drop, and this enables me to quickly change the attributes of a shape without actually having to select that shape on the Layers panel. For example, I can drag and drop this red swatch to the shape on the left, and it'll fill that shape even though it's not the selected shape in the Layers panel. Or I could select my gradient and drag and drop from the Gradient panel onto a layer that's selected or even a layer that's not selected in order to change the fill of that shape layer. If I have multiple layers selected in the Layers panel, I can also click to fill both of them with the same color with a single click. Now, by default, when you drag from the Shape preset panel into the image area, Photoshop creates a new shape layer in the Layers panel. This enables me to select the Move tool and select a specific layer, and then reposition that shape very quickly. But there are times when I might want multiple shapes to interact with one another, in which case I don't want them on separate layers, but I want to merge those layers together. Let me show you why first. I'll select both of the layers, and then I'll tap the U key so that I get the options not only for the fill, but also for the stroke for the shape layers. I'll click and add an orange stroke to this, making it maybe 20 pixels to make sure that we can see it. When I select just one of the layers and I reposition it on top of another layer, it behaves like any other layer in the Layers panel, where the small layer on top is going to hide the layer below it. But if I want to actually merge these into a single shape, they need to be on the same shape layer. So I'll select both of the layers in the Layers panel, and then choose Layer and Merge Shapes. Once I've merged them down onto the same shape layer, they become unified with one another. While I can use the Move tool to move them both around, if I want to select a single shape or modify the shape, I need to switch to the Path Selection tool or the Direct Selection tool. With the Path Selection tool selected, I can select a single shape and then drag in order to reposition that shape. If I have the Direct Selection tool selected, then I can select a specific anchor point or a direction line or a line in the shape and then move or reposition it. Then I'll switch back to the Path Selection tool and let's overlap these two shapes. I'll select both of them by holding down the Shift key and clicking on the larger heart as well. And if we look in the options bar, we can see that it's set to combine shapes. If I wanted to subtract one shape from another, I'll choose Subtract Front Shape, and I basically get the entire layer reversed out. You'll also notice that I no longer have the stroke. Let's choose to intersect the shape areas. Now I just get the intersection of those two hearts. And if I choose to exclude overlapping shapes, then I can see the shapes except for in the area where they're overlapping. Now, if you're seeing something different on your screen, it might be because of the order in which you created the shapes. So if you ever need to change a shape stacking order, you can select a shape, and then from the options bar, you can choose to bring that shape either to the front or just forward one level, or you can move it backwards or move it to the back. Okay, at this point, I'm going to set the path alignment options back to the subtract front shape. And then with the smaller heart selected, I'm just going to move that up within that outer shape. I don't want the stroke applied to this, so I'm going to click on the stroke option and just remove that. And then if I've created a shape that I think that I'll want to use again, I can save this by choosing the Edit menu and then selecting Define Custom Shape. I'll call this JK Heart. Click OK. And if we go to our Shapes preset panel, we can see that it's been added to that legacy default shapes. If I want to remove it, I can just click and drag. I'll position my cursor near the bottom of the Shapes preset picker so that it will scroll down. And then I can remove it from those legacy shapes. In fact, I could even create my own group here. I'll call it JK Shapes. And then I'll drag my custom shape inside of it.